I opened my door for work at exactly 6 a.m. and froze. The fog rolling off the street was heavy and damp. I expected to see the morning paper, or perhaps a misdelivered package. Instead, my hand locked entirely on the brass deadbolt. My sister's 2 young children were standing on my welcome mat. Emily was 4, Jack was 2. They were standing completely still in the gray morning light. Neither of them was crying. They were just waiting. Jack was holding a small, faded plastic dinosaur. Emily was holding a single piece of paper. I knelt down to their eye level. I took the paper from Emily's small, cold hand. I immediately noted the weight of it. It was premium, 32-pound cardstock, the exact kind of high-density paper used for elite corporate presentations. I ran my thumb over the text. The ink was laser-printed, perfectly aligned, lacking the slight bleed you get from standard home inkjet printers. If you looked closely at the margins under the porch light, faint yellow tracking dots, printer steganography, were barely visible against the white fiber. It read, "I'll pick them up when they're 18. I did not drop to my knees. I did not cry out in disbelief. I didn't feel my heart shatter. Panic is an unpredictable chemical reaction. It floods the prefrontal cortex with cortisol, limiting rational decision-making. It makes you sloppy. I didn't need to panic. I needed to observe." I looked down at the children. My sister Lily had always claimed to be on the brink of absolute financial ruin. She constantly demanded loans from our extended family just to keep the heat on in her apartment. But as I looked at Jack and Emily standing on my concrete porch, the physical data didn't align with her narrative. They were wearing brand new $300 Golden Goose sneakers. The laces were pristine white. The rubber soles hadn't even touched dirt. Jack was wearing a tailored miniature North Face puffer jacket. Emily had a designer cashmere scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. I brought them inside. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator compressor. The digital thermostat on the wall read exactly 68 degrees. I took Jack's small, heavily packed diaper bag and placed it on the kitchen island. I unzipped the main nylon compartment. It was haphazardly stuffed with generic brand diapers and a half-empty sleeve of cheap, crushed saltine crackers. The discrepancy was glaring. $300 shoes, but bottom-tier discount food. I ran my hand along the inner lining of the bag. Tucked deep into the front mesh pocket was a single, crumpled piece of thermal receipt paper. I pulled it out and smoothed it flat on the cold granite counter. The thermal ink was faded, but highly legible under the kitchen pendants. The timestamp was 11:45 p.m. last night. The merchant ID sequence didn't trace to a local grocery store or a gas station. It traced to a private aviation terminal at Los Angeles International Airport. The purchase itemized on the slip was for 2 bottles of Dom Perignon vintage champagne. Total, $850. My heart rate stabilized at a steady, resting 65 beats per minute. The initial spike of adrenaline froze in my veins, replaced instantly by absolute, cold clarity. At that exact moment, Lily stopped feeling like my sister. I stopped trying to understand her emotional deficits. She was no longer family. She was simply an anomaly in a data set, a fraud case waiting to be closed. If you've ever given everything to someone who was secretly taking you apart, subscribe, because I'm about to show you exactly how to take your power back. My cell phone buzzed against the granite counter, vibrating the $850 receipt. A text message from Lily. "You always loved playing the martyr. Keep them, but don't expect a dime from me. I'm finally choosing my own happiness. You should try it sometime." Silence. I didn't call her back. Calling gives a narcissist exactly what they want: supply. It signals distress. It validates their control over your physiological state. To a manipulator, your anger is just proof of their power. Instead, I made the kids a bowl of warm oatmeal. I sat them at the dining table. I watched them eat in quiet safety. Then, I walked into my home office and opened my laptop. I am not a hacker. Hacking is a television myth designed for entertainment. But people who commit systemic fraud always leave a public, legal footprint if you know exactly which digital databases to query. I started with the State Child Support and Trust Registry. Our late grandmother had established a highly rigid financial trust for Emily and Jack before she passed. She knew Lily was erratic, so she legally structured the disbursements with a strict contingency. The trust paid out $2,500 a month, but that money was dispersed directly to the primary physical custodian for the children's living expenses. $2,500 every single month, $30,000 a year, tax-free. I pulled the public property records for Los Angeles County. I ran Lily's Social Security number through open-source civil dockets and state corporate commission websites. For the next 2 hours, the only sound in the room was the low, steady hum of my laptop's internal cooling fan and the sharp, deliberate click of my mouse. My morning coffee turned ice cold on the desk. I didn't touch it. I found it. A new limited liability company registered in Cheyenne, Wyoming, filed exactly 6 weeks ago. Wyoming allows for registered agent anonymity, but careless people always leave a secondary link. The registered agent on the secondary mailing address was a man named Marcus Vance. He was a failed, heavily indebted music producer Lily had been seeing on and off for 6 months. I utilized a secure online retainer to hire a private forensic accountant based out of Chicago. I gave him the Wyoming LLC name, Marcus Vance's details, and the $850 private aviation receipt. 48 hours later, the accountant delivered a heavily encrypted, password-protected PDF file to my secure server. I opened it. Through standard civil discovery filings and open banking metadata, the accountant had easily bypassed the LLC's shell structure. Lily hadn't just abandoned her children to chase an illusion of a music career. She was actively funneling the $2,500 monthly trust disbursements directly into Marcus's Wyoming LLC. She was classifying the stolen trust money as consulting fees to fund studio time and private charter flights to recording sessions. She was monetizing her children's existence while discarding the children themselves. 3 days later, the real trap was set in motion. A licensed process server knocked on my front door and handed me a thick stack of legal papers. Lily had filed a formal police report and an emergency custody injunction in family court. Her sworn affidavit claimed I had violently kidnapped the children from her contracted babysitter while she was away on a weekend wellness retreat. It was a highly calculated, sociopathic legal maneuver. She needed to establish a documented narrative that I was unhinged and dangerous. If she won the injunction, she would maintain official paper custody. That would ensure the $2,500 monthly checks kept flowing directly to her Wyoming shell company, while I would be facing felony kidnapping charges in a state penitentiary. She expected me to show up to the courtroom completely hysterical. She expected me to wave her printed note in the air like a crazy person, while she played the calm, collected victim. She thought she had buried the paper trail under state lines and shell companies. She forgot I built the shovel. Before I show you the exact document that dismantled her entire manufactured reality, make sure you hit subscribe. You do not want to miss the absolute precision of how this ends. Family Court, Room 402, Tuesday morning. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed at a low, irritating 60 hertz. The air in the courtroom smelled faintly of industrial floor wax and stale coffee. Lily sat at the petitioner's table. She was dressed meticulously for the role. She wore a conservative, high-necked navy dress. Her hair was pulled back into a simple, neat clasp. She played the part of the terrified, victimized, exhausted mother with terrifying accuracy. When the presiding judge asked for her opening statement, she wept on absolute command. "She just took them, Your Honor," Lily choked out, her voice trembling perfectly. She wiped a single manufactured tear from her cheek. "I've been terrified for my babies. I haven't slept in a week." I sat 20 feet away at the respondent's table. My posture was perfectly straight. My breathing was slow, measured, and entirely controlled. The judge looked down at me from the bench, peering over his reading glasses. Counsel, your client's response to these severe kidnapping allegations? I didn't argue. I didn't defend my moral character. Anger is sloppy. Emotional defense looks like guilt. Evidence is absolute. I nodded to my attorney. He picked up a thick black leather-bound binder from the table and walked it directly to the judge's bench. Tab A. The physical 32-pound cardstock note, perfectly preserved in an archival evidence sleeve. Next to it was a sworn affidavit from a licensed forensic linguistics and document expert. The expert confirmed that the microscopic yellow tracking dots, the printer steganography embedded in the paper, matched the exact corporate printer model located inside Marcus Vance's Los Angeles recording studio. She didn't write it in a panic. She drafted it in her boyfriend's office. Tab B. The $850 private aviation receipt, cross-referenced with geotagged, time-stamped social media posts extracted from Marcus's public profile before he could delete them. The high-resolution photos clearly showed Lily sitting on a chartered yacht in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, holding a glass of Dom Perignon. The timestamp on the photo matched the exact Tuesday morning she swore under oath that I had broken into her home to steal her children. Tab C. The kill shot. The subpoenaed financial SWIFT logs from the Wyoming LLC. The documents proved a direct, unalterable digital transfer of the children's $2,500 monthly trust funds into a shell account. The ledger showed the trust money was used exclusively to purchase luxury goods, studio time, and the private flight to Cabo. The judge adjusted his glasses. He read the metadata aloud into the quiet, echoing court record. The anatomy of human panic is universal. It is a biological response. It cannot be faked, and it cannot be hidden, even by the best manipulators. Lily's tears stopped instantly. Her pupils dilated to adjust to the sudden spike in blood pressure. The blood drained entirely from her face, leaving her pale, rigid, and frozen in her chair. The tendons in her neck strained visibly as she stared at the black binder resting on the judge's desk. Her expensive, retained lawyer looked down at his copy of the bank logs. He read the felony wire fraud evidence. He physically leaned 2 inches away from Lily. He didn't say a word to her. He quietly and deliberately clicked his silver pen shut. He placed it inside his leather briefcase, folded his hands, and snapped the brass locks closed. He was entirely done. The heavy, definitive sound of the judge's wooden gavel cracked through the silent room like a gunshot. Emergency custody was instantly revoked. Supervised visitation was permanently stripped, pending a psychological evaluation. The judge didn't stop there. He formally ordered a full federal review of the Wyoming LLC, referring Marcus Vance and Lily to the state attorney general for interstate wire fraud and trust embezzlement. Lily traded her own children for a yacht, a fake lifestyle, and a lie. Now, she doesn't have any of them. Later that evening, the house was quiet again. I sat on the living room rug. Jack was intensely focused on stacking 4 heavy wooden blocks on top of each other. Emily was coloring quietly beside him, humming a small tune. They were safe. The trust was legally secured in a locked, court-appointed conservatorship. The anomaly had been permanently and surgically removed from their lives. Jack successfully placed the 4th block without it falling. He looked up at me, his eyes bright, and smiled. I smiled back. If you found this satisfying, subscribe. There are a lot of predators out there wearing familiar faces. But no matter how smart they think they are, they all leave a digital footprint.